for so many years, and I don't want any COVID. I don't want any, I don't demand that they give me COVID. They don't pay me. I don't I don't demand anything. Just let me live like a man. At least that. Right. So we saw the Yichud in Kedusha of the Eretz V'Kelim and Beklal. We saw that the Inyan of Kedusha, of Sitra Kedusha, in Yoni was the Inyan of Achdus HaChayes V'Hakelim. But before we reached the actual Inyan of Chayes V'Kelim, in detail, we spoke about the Inyan of Yichud HaNefesh Im HaGuf. And we saw...
We've gotten the date.
Oh, yes. So what is today? Today is Kof Beis Tevet, Toshin Samech Vav, Chaim Beis, Diba Maschil, Yom Hallelu Savaya, Kol Goyim, Omud Tov Kof Hay. So we saw the Pashtus Inyanim. We saw the Inyan of the Yichud HaNeshama Im HaGuf, the Nefesh Im HaGuf, and we saw that the Inyan of these Shachtas was such that they became Shachtas Gemura, and the Pshat was that not that the Guf was a Dover Chai, and or not that it was something that the Shomer enters it, and Bamera, it remains a Dover Mace, and the Neshama just pushes it and makes it live. But we saw that the Inyan was that the Guf Ein Chanami. Mitzad Etzem Inyonei, the Guf is a Dover Goelmi, and it's a fila. The Inyan from Movis Mitzad Atzmei, Mitzad the Etzem Inyan of Choymer HaGashmiyas in the Guf. However, we saw that through the Inyan of the Slapshas, then the Guf became a Dover Chai. That was the Nakuda. Not that the Nefesh just pushes it around, and co-way that the Nefesh is in it, Mitzad the Tnuas the Nefesh, the Guf gains a Tnua from the Nefesh, but we saw that the Guf itself becomes a Dover Chai. In other words, that every, like we call it nowadays, every ta, every cell, every portion of the guf actually becomes alive from the contact with the nefesh. What that means, that henachanami, the guf mitzad atzmei, is not like that. The guf mitzad atzmei is the inyan of hoive v'nifsad, and there was the inyan from moris mitzad atzmei. However, the entrance of the guf into it causes that each aspect of that guf becomes a dover chai. Henachanami, b'istauchus haguf, b'istauchus hanefesh, v'ha neshama. So then, henachanami, the guf returns to that state. But kol that the neshama is there, then the guf mamish lives and becomes itself a dover atzmoi chai. And now that the dugma of that Lamaila is much more, because we're going to see, and we all mentioned it briefly at the end of the last year. But dugma is Lamaila, last two lines of Tov Kof Hay. Kelim hein beginas kiyum atzmi mitzad islapshus ha'er bohem, shu beginas isachtes mamish. In other words, the islapshus of the oil inside the kelim causes that the kelim become mamish like the oil. And just like the oil has what we call a kiyum atzmi, so then the kelim mitzadi yesyatas with the oil, so then the kelim also gain the sinian of kiyum atzmi. Now that's a very key expression, even though it occurs here rak behemshech hadvarim. But a lot of biurim, a lot of inyonim b'zeh b'chsidas. What does it mean, kiyum atzmi? Just like the Alter Rebbe brings in Geras HaKodesh, benegir to the Eibishter, the Etzem HaMatzil himself, Atzm Saint say that he is Metziusei Me Atzmusei. Ve'ener Olu Mishum Siba Olav Siba Hakodma Lo Yisborach. That means that the Eibishter's Matthias is a Matthias Atzmias. In other words, the Matthias Mitzad Atzmi, he never had anything which caused him or brought him about, or in any way has affected his Matthias. Among it, Mitzad that, but it's shy to say that he has what we call Kiyum Atzmi. In other words, now Matthias and Kiyum are really two inyonim. And I don't want to, I'm not necessarily being, Makashi, the two inyonim together. Matthias is one inyan and Kiyum is another inyan. But like we see when I get to any entity, its Matthias is the fact that it's there. Kiyum is its lastingness, or its ability to continue being the way it is. That's called Kiyum. So the fact that the Eibishter is Metziusei Me'atzmusei, then it also means that Kiyumei, it doesn't necessarily mean, but by the Eibishter it does, that his Kiyum is also Atzmi. In other words, he will always be exactly the way he is. Mitzad Atzmoi, not that he has any goyim or he's not totally in any ilaver, Siba. The difference between the Oyer and the Chiddush is the Kalim, that they do have a beginning. In other words, that Metziusam is Einum Me'atzmusam. They come Mitzad the Moya. However, the Yichud of the Oyer with the Moya is that they take on some of the essential aspects of the Moya, and therefore, just like the Kiyumei Me'atzmusei, apart from the Metziusei Me'atzmusei, we're now looking at the Kiyum, they at least gain that from their Yichud with the Moya. Metziusei Me'atzmusei, they'll never be able to gain because they come from the Moya. They began. They had what's called a Kodmei Aheder. There was a state where there was nothing of their Matthias, and then they came about through the Hamshocha from the Moya. However, once they do come about, then they gain the other aspect of the Atzmus, which is Kiyumim Atzmusi. That they do gain, which means that they now, they as it were exist mitzad their own being. They continue to exist mitzad their own being. You can't say that their very existence is mitzad their own being, but they gain this unbelievable maila that their kiyum is mitzad atzmai. In other words, that they're no longer tolui in any other power. They, as it were, they live or they continue to exist and to function mitzad their own self. And that's called kiyum atzmi. And that they gain from the yichud with the moya. It's not shaykh to say anything like that, only mitzad the yichud with the moya. So normally speaking, we say that the oiris, kiyuma miatzmusam. So here the Rebbe says that the yichud at the kelim with the oiris is so amiti and so immense that even the kelim, what they're another gather altogether, they're not ha'ora Atzmi from the Moya, and therefore they don't have that yichud with the Moya that the Oiris have. However, al yedei the yichud of the Kelim with the Oyer, then the Kelim also become kiyumam miatzmusam. And that's what he says, that they are in a state of kiyum atzmi mitzad islapshus oerbahem. Because the goyim which gives them this inyan is the oil. Shehub chinas isaktas mamish. Now here we're talking, when we say isaktas, we mean isaktas between the oils and the kelim. Ubi emes yichud ha'oiros ima kelim hu yoser mi yichud v'yischabes anishom imagu. Said the Rebbe, you've got to bear in mind that even though we've gone from the yichud of the neshama to the guf, into the yichud of the kelim with the oiros, then we've got to understand that it's a tremendous merchach ha'erev between the two. Because the yichud of the oiros with the kelim is much more and incomparably more than the yichud of the yischabes and the neshama imaguf. So now, why? Because the Ishabas of the Neshama Maguf is so kosof in Shnei Dvorim, Nifrodim, Zemizeh, Shuinim Zemizeh, and until come over become a Mekamisin, so there's even Hafochim Zemizeh, the Guf and the Neshama Mamish Hafukim. It's a great Chiddush to say that there's a Yichud otzm between them till the Kli, which is the group Mamish lives, becomes a Dover Chai from the Ishabshus and the Neshama. However, the Kelim Lamaila are not in that way at all. The Kelim are not separate in Yonim from the Oyer. They're for sure not Dvarim Hafuchim Mi'Ha'Oyer. However, how can you say that? The Keli is a Dover Shoine Be'etzim in Yonim from the Oyer. So here we see the Rebbe goes like a series of stages here, which is a very dachistic inyan, and due to the difficulties, which for some strange reason Hashem wanted I should have, I haven't been able to mamish be mesamik in the inyan kekola tzurich as I'm rogil prior to these classes. But however, suffice it to say that there are kama shittas in the great Mekubalim as to what are the status of the Kelim, how they are in Atzilas. Now we're talking about in Atzilas, where that's where the Kelim actually appear, because the whole idea is how the Kelim are Lamaila me Atzilas, and they have different stages of his butlers inside the earth, which we'll mention something I'll do it Odma. So there was the Rebbe. We have about 3 or 4 days in Kabbalah when we get to the status of the Kelim, and we're going now Milmaila Lamata, as it were, from the highest view of that Yichud and that inter-status between the Eretz and the Kelim, down to views which make the Kelim and the Eretz more separate in Etzem Mahusa. So the Rebbe said that this Merchak Ha'era between the Moshel and the Neshama with the Guf and the Eretz and the Kelim is greater the higher you understand the status of the Kelim legabi the Guf. Sheharei ladas ha'mareches. Now when he says mareches, there's a famous sefer in Kabbalah. Was le'ezatem, it's at the Chalisha Sakesi. I've forgotten the name of the author. But anyway, he wrote a famous sefer called Mareches Elakus. I have the sefer though. I just forgotten who's the Mechaber. The Mareches Elakus, and it's a sefer or a very early Mekubu that he deals Shmoy Keinhu with the whole Mareches of the Gilui of the Eretz for Kelim and the whole in the Eilamas and the Yachas of all the different Inyanim from Lamailama Atzilas and through Atzilas all the way down into the Eilamas Biyah and their Eretz and Kelim v'chule. A great work in the Inyan of Kabbalah, which he calls Mareches Ho'elakus, as he calls it. So according to the Mareches, Viho Avedas HaKodesh. Now the Avedas HaKodesh is a more familiar work. That was written by a very early Makubal, very, very early. If I'm not mistaken, he was even in the latter period of the Rishonim, and he was called the Maran Ibn Gabai, or the Maram, Rabbeinu Meir Ibn Gabai, Maram Ibn Gabai. That was his name, and he wrote this great work called the Avedas HaKodesh, which is a work in Hakira Elakis v'Kabbalah. It's very readable, very, very tremendously Masuda, and he's the famous one that Chassidus quotes on many occasions, where he says that the Gvul Hanimto Memenu Tchila, that's the Esa Kelim, the Esa Kelim with the Esa Spheres Tatzil, is a very famous mark. V'imata oimer she'ein lo koyat b'gvul ata machaser shlei Musa, that famous quote, well, that's from the Avedas HaKodesh. However, interestingly enough, we see that even though he calls the Kelim the Koyach HaGvul, Animtum Tchila, we're going to see here that really that has to be taken also somewhat in a modified way, because he holds a very special shitta beneged to the Kelim, which puts him in the same bracket, more or less. Maybe not, but is the exactitude, maybe there's slight differences, but Claudius, they can be linked together that they hold that the Esses Firas hein etzem elokus mamish. Now it's well known that everybody holds that Olam HaAtzilus is Olam HaElokus, and it's not Cholila b'finas Nivra, Klal. However, we're going to see later on that oddly enough, the Alter Rebbe, of all people, I said the Alter Rebbe, our Rebbe, he holds that the Kelim and Atzilus, even though they're mamish, he also would agree that they're mamish Elokus, but he holds that they're already a certain koyach in Elokus, which is already beginning to express itself the way it does in Olam HaBriya. In other words, that he holds that the Kelim are already a koyach like Briya inside Atzilus. The Alter Rebbe holds a very special shita beneged to the Kelim, and therefore you can't really say, according to him, or even according to a slightly higher day, which is the Pardes, that the Esses Firas are mamish etzem elokus mamish. Because that means, when we say Sfiras, we mean Oiras and Kelim. That's the Choladeas. There's Oiras and Kelim. That's what a Sfira is. If you say that hein etzem elokus mamish, what you mean by that is that they are just like the Oyer is a Gilui of the Moyer, also the Kelim are a Gilui mamish of the Moyer, even though they represent another Koyach, as the Vedas HaKodesh himself says, but they represented how it is mitzad the Moyer, how it is almost, as you might say, in the Moyer himself. And we're going to see the Rebbe says that mamish later, that they hold that Atzilus is just like a potential Gilui, but when I call it potential, because it's really just a gilui of how these inyonim are in the etzem. How these inyonim are in the etzem elokus, how he's l'mayla mi'ah atzilus lagamre, it just somehow or another expresses itself in atzilus. And therefore nothing really alters between the way the Oiras and the Kelim are l'mayla mi'ah atzilus and atzilus. And that's what he means, that the etzem elokus mamish, v'ainu shegama kelim ein b'pchinas atzilus. Now the reason he says that is because, like we said, the Alter Rebbe and even the Pardes, they hold that the kelim are not atzilus, or they're what we call briya sheba atzilus. In other words, they are another inyan, another nuance that finds themselves inside atzilus. But according to these two parties, the kelim are mamish, the madrega of atzilus. Dahainu, Ne'atzalim miya Elokus, they're just a gilui of the Helem. Yeah, they're gilui, the way things are in Elokus, that's the way they are in Atzilus. V'im kein, hariheim hus achas mamish ima oiras, v'ein ze klal k'moi shnei dvorima mishyachadim. That you can't say that they're a kelim and that they're oiras and they get together. No, the two of them, since we're talking here, it's almost like you might say that you're sitting in Lamaila and you're just looking down somewhat. It's just like something manages somehow or another to come down for the camera rays, as you might say, from the way it is, and you just see it on a level which makes it more observable. But we're really talking about how it is in the Etzem, and that Elokus, how it is in Atzilus, is just an expression of the etzem, something similar to, like we say, that Pnimis Abba, he Pnimius Atik Mamish, we say that that's just how Atik comes over into the Ne'atzolim. The same way here, there's no real alteration, it's just a slight Yerida for the sake of the Mekablim, just like we say, there is a delicate nafkamina between Atik Moishuhu and Atik Moishuhu be Pnimius Abba. So that was the Rebbe V'yesh Loima. So we've got to try and understand him Kain. What is the eating of the Kelim, Lufi, this shitta? If there's not two inyonim, there's not oiras for Kelim, and one is mamish mislavish in the other, then how do you talk about oiras for Kelim? Mele the oir, I'm prepared to understand, as you might say. What are the Kelim? How do they express themselves according to that shitta? Eish Loima, said the Rebbe, tell me a suggestion. The Lashita Zu, Inyan HaKelim Hu Rak is Galus HaOer. The Inyan of the Kli is only the Gilui of the Oer. Now, why he says that, we'll soon see in a second. V'harei HaGilui Ena Mahus Achamina Etem. Everybody understands that our Gilui from our Etem is not a dover nivdal from the etzem. No, on the contrary. Yeah, the dover hamishgala min ha'etzem is mamish betachas ha'yichud and yain ha'etzem mamish. Yeah. And the fact that he says that it's the inner of the kelim, that only the gilui min ha'etzem, then that means that the etzem and its gilui are moving, that they are one Indian mamish, and it's not that there's another Indian here in the middle into which the gilui is mishyachid or mislabi. He said that according to this understanding, the oira and the oiras and the kelim are mamish one Indian. Ela, the oira is mitzad etzem tivom, Indian is aliyah v'dveikes, and the kelim is a koyach in the oil which causes them to be yoredu misgala. In other words, that the Eibster puts into the oil a koyach which makes it go down and be misgala. Now I'm meduic in what I'm saying, because that's what's going to be said a bit later. That the Indian of the oil is afilu haraya in Achilas. It's mavur in Baruch Mekemis and says that all the spheres before Malchus, all of them are in a state of aliyah v'iskalus in the moya. When we talk about Esses spheres, we don't really know what we're talking about, because they're all in a oifen from aliyah v'dveikis in the moya. That what we say, that there's a yachas from one sphere to the other. But let's say spheres chokhmah is meya into spheres abina, and spheres abina is meya into chesed or keitzah b'zeh. Well, that's only that there's a certain koyach hagilui mi etzem sphere shu etzem elakus into another sphere. And that koyach hagilui va'yerida, well, that's called what we might say malchus shebesfira ha'u. That's called the union for malchus shebesfira ha'u, and that's called the keli shebesfira ha'u, according to the Shitta. But it's only a power that the oya gains to reveal itself and not be in a state of aliyah v'istalkis. That's all. Not that there's any entity called keli, but the Eibster literally puts inside the oil an ability to allow itself to be mishgala. And that
the oil has two opposite.
Yeah, the oil has two opposite tnuas. One tnua, which is mitzad the oil, mitzad its own gishmak, as you might say, mitzad its own Indian, is aliyah, and then there's another Indian in oil which makes it be mishgala. Or that Indian which causes it to be mishgala, that's called keli. Or not there's anything really called a keli. You understand? It's a pili place. That's what the Indian of the Mareches. And the Indian is that the Avodah HaKodesh also holds to say, even though certain Lashonos that he has to say tend to be a little bit tempting to maybe understand it differently, but that's what the Rebbe says here.
Is Bina the Kli for Chochmah?
No, that's not right. Bina is another oil. Bina is another Indian, another oil. The Avish was Matzil oil called Bina. There's an ability of Chokhmah in its lower level to reveal itself in a way that it'll give a certain shefa of its oil into Bina. Can you understand me? But that urida of the oil to another oil, to give rise and to help another oil to be miskala, that's called keli. Oh, there's no such thing as a keli. There's no such thing as a limited entity in which the oil is mislavish. Because the Mareches holds that you can't say that. You can't say that when you talk only in Elikus, you can't talk about two different inyonim. He said the Eibush doesn't have two inyonim. He doesn't have one in and another. He plays within himself, that he calls this part of himself to enter another part of himself. He tells us that that's all out of the question. So he says all the kelim, if you talk about kelim in Atzilus, you're only talking about abilities, the planted inside the earth to either go down or to go up.
So if called Achdus Achat, how can you differentiate between the Sfirot? Is the Sfirot? No.
Yeah, you don't really. You can't really differentiate between them. You can only differentiate in the sense that the Eibster revealed, because I understand what you're telling. Your time is written in Rabbi Mekemis and says that the Ikein of a Sfirot is its Keli. And the whole, that's what's written in many places, that the whole union of Chesed is in the Keli, over the Earth. But that's the Sapshitas. Und da kommt es nicht das. understand? Here, and that's going to involve us in another big discussion, which I don't want to get into right now. You've got a good point. Normally speaking, we say there's another entity called the Kli. The Oyer is Poshet, and the Kli, that's the Chesed, or that's the Chokmah. They state in the Kutei Torah, many, many places. Oh, that's going to be the shit of the Alter Rebbe. Unless we're going to see right at the end of this little chapter here, that's the Alter Rebbe. But these people, they don't know that. They don't know that you can talk that way. In Elokus, Atzilus, and that's what the Rebbe said, Hein Atzilus. Atzilus means he himself, that's him. Atzilus is the Eibishter making, as it were, certain nuances and preparations in himself to give rise eventually to these Tavis, or the elements. So they say, when you're talking inside him, you haven't got two separate inyonim. It's all one thing by him. In the Eibishter, there's no two inyonim. There's who? Can you follow the idea? The Eibishter gives forth a certain gilui, or that's only like a inin from Oyer. Oyer they can go for, because Oyer is mamish me'en amoyer. Oyer they go for. Anything more than that you can't really say. In Oyer Gufa, the Eibishter caused that Oyer can somehow or another talk about itself in a way. Or that talking about itself, that's called Kli. That's what it reveals itself. That's called a Kli. The way it was revealed l'chatchila, it was meant to be chesed. You understand? Or Elohim came will be mechalik in another way. I don't want to sort of get into too much into the details of it right now. That's according to them. So there was a Rebbe. Harei agilu ena mohus acha min ha'eter. In him, sir, that the Kli is only these galas. It's the ability that the oil has to reveal itself and show itself kilo to another oil. That is galas. Yesh leima b'beisei fanim. We could say that in two ways. Aleph. Now we're talking only about these galas. Shehu al derech b'chinas hamalchus. Shehu inin agiloi. Ukenoida, the Sphira Shalamayla Mibchinas Amalchus, Heim Bibchinas Devekis Bimkoirom. Vagilui Ubchinas Amalchus. Ukemoishi is boil a kamon. That's going to be explained later in Chelik Beis, in Parsha Vayigas. There's a mime over there where the Rebbe talks about that Indian. Val Derezeh Hu Indian Akelim Lashita Samareches. The Rebbe said that we are Mavaya later on in the Hemshech, that all the spheres in Atzilus are really not in a state of Yerida V'Gilui. And they really have no entity per se. Their whole union is Mitzad Ike Inyonim is Oyer, and the union of an Oyer is Aliyah V'Dveikis Bimkoi, right? In other words, we have to go back to the whole original idea of Oyer. And the whole original idea of Oyer is that it doesn't want to be Miskale. On the contrary, it wants to be Oyleve. And on the contrary, we say that Tevet Oyer, the etching tchuna of Oyer, is to be Oyleve Dovuk Bim Koyer. Amanele, says the Rebbe, all of the spheres in Atzilus, L'chol HaDeyes, are really in that state of Aliyah Dveikis, because L'chol HaDeyes, Ike HaSpheres, is Oyer in Atzilus. The Inu from Keli Eksha, who hasn't yet become mamisha a functioning Matthias, because even the Alter Rebbe, that he says that it's mamisha Inu from Gvul, he holds it's still only koyach Gvul. It's not mamish the Inu from Gvul, mamish, even though he writes mamish, but in a way he doesn't really, he means it's the koyach Gvul mamish. Amamela, L'chol is the Ike is the Inu of Oyer. All the spheres in Atzilus are in a state of Aliyah V'Istalkus V'Dveikis L'mayla. What causes, like we just said, that one Oyer goes down and somehow or another gives a shefa or forms a connection with another Oyer, or that's the Kerch of the Keli. And that Keli is called the Malchus Shebekol Sphira. You follow? In other words, it's just like we see that Malchus by a mensch is the ability to give over things to another being, Dibu, and Ishkashus of the Etzem Odom Atzmei to a Shomaya. So Kaviochol Lamayla, there's a Inin called Malchus, with Inyone is Gilui Klape Zulus. What sort of Zulus is there in Atzilus? Another Gera of the Oyer. Another Inin in the Oyer. Amamira, that ability to express from one to the other, well, that's called Malchus. And that's the Inin of Gilui. In other words, that the Oilers are so in a state of aliyah vistalkas that they don't care about Gilui. They don't even talk the whole idea of Gilui. And therefore that koyach hamalchus, which is in them, the Rebbe says in that Maimah, is not really from them. It's not really from them. It's from the koyach ha'atzmi of the Eibishter. He has this ability to make, as we said, the koyach ha'gvul, as it were. But here it's not koyach ha'gvul. It's the ability to make something be in a state of gilui. Because I say, since the Ike Indian prior to Malchus is Oires, nothing wants to be Begilui. Nothing's prepared really to be Begilui. In order to make Gilui, there has to be a power called Koyach HaGilui. And that's called Malchus. Yeah, that's called Malchus. And Mamela says, the Rebbe over there in that Maimah, he said, that's the Indian of the Malchus Shebechol Sphira. Yeah. Begin de Vegas Bimkorim, Va'Gilui begins a Malchus.
It's also above Atzilus?
Huh?
That also happens above Atzilus?
Yeah. Above Atzilus we've got no problems. But but in Tuyu it didn't happen.
The Oris came down?
Yeah, it didn't happen in Tuyu. But something caused the Oris to come down from Akudim into Tuyu. And that was this Kli Echad. Voilà? There was an Akudim. And Kli Echad in Akudim was this Indian boy from Kloli. And therefore, according to some Biurim, the Alter Rebbe says in the Siddur that that's why the Shvira is really Miyuchas Ta'akudim. But on the other hand, in another mind, he writes Chas V'Sholem to say that the Shvira was in Akudim. Yes, how can you have a cake and eat it too? But what he means is that the way it is in Akudim, it's just the Koyach HaGilui. What happened in Tuyu is that it actually went down. But it went down the way it is in Akudim. And in Akudim, it's all sort of linked together. It's all sort of one in you. The way it came down into Elam HaTuyu, that everything came down the way it is with all its Tuyikiv and all its in here. So therefore, everything couldn't get together. Yeah. So therefore, really it happened mitzad Akudim, but it didn't happen in Akudim. Al-Chaponim, that Kli Echad, that's the ability to be Megala. But it's only a Kli Echad. It's only Megala, these things how they are in their etzim state. In their etzim state, they're not able to get together. Yeah, so, you got all the way through, you got this union of a power to reveal something. So that's called the union of the Malchus Shebechol Sphira. However, he says, at the sake of Moshe Boilil, Val Derech Hu Inen Kelim L'Shittas HaMareches. Yeah, where I say that's what he calls in Atzilus the Kelim. A Malchus Shebechol Sphira, which in Yonah is to reveal. Rashi said the Bechinas Malchus Hari Hu Bechinas Nivdelis Mitam Zeh. The Lafi Zekum Dois that the union of Malchus is a Bechina Nivdelis Letam Zeh. Because all the spheres and all the spheres included in the spheres mitzad these colors, all are in a state of aliyah v'dveikis klapi maila. All of a sudden you say, no, we're going down, we're going to be mashpia to another sphere, and that must be a koyach which somehow or another is mudal from all of them, because if it was just like them, then it's also going to go up. Yet over this koyach and malchus, with the koyach hagilish boy, we have to say it's a inyan nivdal, and that's this inyan of what we talk about Keli, but he's not going to like that. The Rebbe Benegir to the Mareches. The fact that we say Latam Zeh, we mean B'klal that biur of a Sof. You have to say it's a little bit nivdal. But Tzarich Loima sheyesh b'zeh gam kain. Hefresh bein hamalchus shu sphira b'fnei atzmei, or bein b'chinas hamalchus shu b'chol sphira. Now the Rebbe said he can run up another inyan, because later on sphiras hamalchus, at the end of all the sphiras, it's malchus, and it becomes malchus and malchus, and it becomes the lamed kelim of malchus tatzila, and what do? They mahava bria yesh me ayin. So that's moving. That's another inyan in the koyach malchus. So we have to be mechalik between this koyach hamalchus in the spirit, which is just to be megala them one to the other, and the ultimate malchus, which is in Yoneh Hula mamish lahavish yesh mi'ayin. Even though each of the malchus shebespheres, he later becomes the sphere sheba malchus. For example, malchus sheba chesed later becomes chesed sheba malchus bespheres hamalchus. What happens then is that there comes in another, the Rebbe writes it over there, that then there comes in another koyach atzmi from the koyach atzmi himself, but he somehow becomes involved in that whole inyan among, he causes it to be another inyan altogether. He causes it to jump out and all of a sudden be mahava olam as biyah. So that was the derby. You got to be careful. If you're saying that the inyan of the mareches uses koyach hamalchus shebechol sfira, you're going to have to be mechalik between the way it is in those spheres and the way it is mamish in the sphere itself. However, he says, "L'shitas hamareches tzorik loima," that the whole inyan of the inyan from malchus shebechol sfira, and particularly malchus, how it is later on, he said, "Tzorik loima shezeu al derech kemoi b'chinas hamalchus b'yoyse klula adayim b'chinas zoh." Maybe we could say that this malchus shebechol sfira, well, that's the way spheres hamalchus before it ever becomes a sfira is what we call kolol Zoh. In my middle, what did it teach? The inyan from Zoh is midas, and midas anyway their inyan is gilui masuyam. Nonetheless, we say that they have, in order to make them be nimshach further into nature and eventually become talkers to biyah, not just to talk within themselves, but to become talkers mamish into biyah, that inside Zoh there's this inyan of malchus el kolum. But it's, what do you see? You see Zoh. You don't really see malchus. There's a kilo, a koil, which is waiting eventually to take everything down further. But in the etzem koch, the midas, just like when a mensch is in the what you might call the tweak of his galus of a midah, he's not started to talk yet, and to express it. That's all going to come at a further development. So then we say that the malchus is kolul inside the midas, and that's called Spheres HaMalchus is actually who kolul b'zoh, meaning that when time the ikar is something, and it didn't really begin the whole inyan of the gilu yet, but to a certain extent it is the gilu shebespheres ha'ilu. Avamel said the Rabbi, that's what we have to say is the inyan of the malchus shebechol sphera. It's only a power just purely to suggest and to give forth a certain gilui, but it's still within the ikar, which is the midah. And therefore we have to say at the beginning, when a mensch begins to be megala a midah, then he's talking bi'ikar the midah. Later when he gets into practicalities of how to be megala that midah through the inyan v'dibur, he brings in all sorts of nuances and all sorts of inyonim, which are, tzamtzim and machavan the midah one way or another, or all sorts of other entities which he may use to get across the midah. But eksha midah bo le'etzem hagilui shela betchilas inyan hagilui of betchilas inyan hadibur, then it's purely a koyach of gilui of the midah, not of anything else. That's inyan from malchus el kolol b'zoh. So, but the shittas hamareches, that's what we have to say is the whole power of gilui only in yonim afila. The inyan for spheres of malchus mamish, it's all like we understand normally and how we're medaber, but even clearly the inyan of malchus el kolol b'zoh. In other words, that even in the oifen of malchus the atzilas, the meaning for malchus mamish kipshut el sphera, we have to say that it's a inyan higher and much more dark in the inyan of shefa than what we normally discuss. And therefore he compares it now. Why mashakos of hapardis binyan yesod ha'ofel. Now this is another famous inyan which is a delicate inyan brought down in Siddur, but it's well known that the Pardes writes in the Sefer Pardes Rimonim, the Ramak. The Pardes means the Ramak. He writes in a place that the Yesod HaOfor is really kolul in the other Yesodes, Be'ikah in the Yesod HaMag. In other words, what happens with Ofor is that it's really just a slight retreat of the other Yesodes from their presence, and B'der Mamela you'll have the inyan from Ofor. In other words, even the way they are, they have offer in them, but if they retreat slightly, then you get offer kipshute. And he brings the dogma, the pardes. If you take pure water, even pure water, I don't know about this water that puts through all the sieves and all the other things that comes out of these little taps. I think so. In other words, that if you hold it up, klapi the oil, you can notice that there's little weeny sort of particles in the water. So the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe brings it, and it's put down in certain, I think in the Middle Rebbe, in the Shara Yichud, and others talk about it. It's brought down in Jewish Chassidus, but in the Maftech it's a little bit hard to find it. But it is brought down. And they say that when you look at the water, are those little particles, those little shtichlach that you see in the water, they're really the Yesod HaOfor, which is kol inside the Yesod HaMai. And they claim that if you boil away the water, then you'll never have just an empty kli. It'll just all vaporize and nothing will be left. When you boil away water, there's always a little trace of some sort of a something which is left at the bottom. You know, how they call it a furious. Oh, that was the word I was looking for. That's what he calls it, the Ramach, a furious. A certain, how do you call it, dusty entity at the bottom. And you notice, I mean, particularly the water over here, you know, if you boil water, you get a whole sediment at the bottom of it. It's like hard to get rid of it. Even if you try to be hygienic, you know, it still forms on the bottom of the kli a certain sediment. So the part is tinus, that is really Yesod HaOfor Amiti. That's really kol in the Mayim. That's the union of the first kilo of Yesod HaOfor, meaning that really the inif and the Yesod HaOfor is in a higher state, kol in the water. So all you see is water, and all you say is water. You don't say, "Oh, that's water and Ofor." You say it's water, but in there is the union of the Ofor. And if to a certain extent a nuance which will occur, I know that the other aspects of the water will withdraw. It could be the sun will dry them off, right? Yeah, or you boil it off, then you have the union of the office. So the Rebbe said that's the union, according to the Mareches, that's the union of Malches, that's the union of Koyach HaGilui, that it's so miyuchad that all you see is the Etzamin, like we said, when you get to the Midas. There's a certain trace, yeah, and therefore the Midas retreat somewhat, and they're oil klape maila abisal, yeah, and the Avis withdraws them slightly. Then you'll have this union of Gilui, which will come out but it's stuck. It's not betachlis. So we have to say, according to the Maret, how do you get this whole union for HMI and you get this whole tremendous fanem, we have to say that there's a special nesinas koyach noisaf mimokim gavoya from the Atzmis himself. That's what he must be told. And that's Oiskahal. I mean, I think it's right to say that, because I say state beneged to certain inyan. Quite a piece of work. So now that we said, well, even a basis even more. Look at that. He said, well, even a basis is still talking in the Mareches now, that we're saying that what is the Kli? Is who she Indianized Galus, or this is Galus, which we call Kli, Hainu Haglomas Ha'oyer, Li Esa Oyer Bebchinish Machias. Haglomas Ha'oyer. That's a new one. You know, the word hagloma means from the word gelim, you know, it suddenly becomes like a simple choimer, you know. Choimer gelim means that it's got the basic thing from which something's made up. So the Rebbe said that there's a inyan that the oil itself becomes niglam. In other words, similar to another expression which we use in but not the same, because if it were, he would have used that expression. Similar to what we find in other places, the Indian fun is avus with the iron. Is avus oil. Have you ever seen that one? It's like a thickening of the oil. So here the Rebbe says hagloma. So we have to say that hagloma is a little bit less than isavus. But what does it mean? That the oil becomes me'tzius. Now what does he mean by that? Oil, by definition, oil being it is a gila the moya, me'ain a moya, b'shachtas gemura, she'ef shelataya, goydle shachtas with the moya, and therefore oil is not a matziyah, because oil's whole union is a liya b'toicha ha-moya. And therefore, we bring down even in madrigas of gila, ein zulos that's even F is built is the Gilui of oil. Nothing else apart from the Eibishter. Remember, the whole Inyan from oil is not a Inyan from Matthias. It says there's no such thing as Matthias. The immediate Gilui says, Ein oil vade, that's what oil says. So how can oil be a Matthias that it's meir to something else? And it makes something else lichtig, means that you leave that thing the way it is and you light it up. Which means that there's a inyan in oil, what oil itself becomes shy to the idea of Matthias. In other words, it's not just the shlila of Matthias, but that's the emsalitikite, but it becomes oil which reckons and is meir to another Matthias. So there we said that's called, the oil becomes a machina of a Matthias. And that's like the Zohar Kodesh says. The Zohar Kodesh says that the emasi inyan from oiros is lav inun nehoirin. That really oiros are not oiros. That's what the Gemara Zohar says, that the oiros, the way they are, mamish klulim in Atzilus and in the Etzem HaMatzil, lavinun nihoirin. They're not lights, because light means you're lighting up something. They're lighting up something else, and for them to become nihoirin, that means that they come a certain Matthias. The oil itself becomes a geder shomtzir. So he said that's according to the Marechas. Another way of explaining that instead of being oil of a dovuk in its own inyan, whatever it may be, it goes down and it's ready to shine to another thing. And that's called gloma, which means like an alteration inside the thing itself, where the oil itself changes its state. Not that it's sort of caused to come into Gilui by another kohen, but it itself changes into a Matthias. Avamela gave a say, was it the Hevdel Ben Zeh? You have to wait till the next year for that one. We have to be mispoin and ma anaf kemina bein shnei pirushim haile. I wanted to be mispoin, but I just for some reason I sort of snapped a little bit. I don't know what happened to me. I didn't feel well. I didn't have the chance to be mispoin and boim kadora. What would be the nafkemina bein shnei advarim hailu? Ulashnei haifanim ein akelim b'chinas Matthias dover v'nei atzmam v'hareihem chad ima. In other words, it doesn't matter which way you learn it, that the kelim they are not a separate inyan from the oil. They're just one thing with the oil. They cause like what you might call a change of direction in the oil, but they're not a separate entity with the oil enters. They're just like a koyak within the oil to alter what you might call the general direction of the oil. So comes out lafizeh or behemoth ladas amareches ein b'chinas kelim klal. They're not really kelim. They're just a koyak to bring certain nuances in the gilui. Ki ima eses firas ein b'chinas atzmis levad. They're mamish. Now, when he means atzmis here, he means the oil ha'atzmi. I promise you. We'll have to go into this another time, but that's what it is. He doesn't mean atzmis in the sense of atzmis. He means atzmis meaning the very oil. V'ayichud hu bi'atzmis ha'ma'atzil. And that's what we said is a yichud for an oil. It's from kelim. It's really mitzad. In other words, the way it is in the etzem ha'matzil and the way it is in Atzilus is all the same thing for myself. The way the oil and the keli are all one thing in the very essence of Hashem. That's the way it is in Atzilus. Like I said before, it's like a photograph, like something's moved in it in such a way that it becomes. We've spoken some about the way the Atik becomes Nimtzo Beina Netzol, or rather, Atik becomes Nimtzo Beina Netzolim Atzil. That the whole inyan of the kelim is a wondrous inyan. It's just a nuance inside the very essence of the Matzil himself, and really the yichud between them is the same yichud that it has within him. It just comes in a way into Gilui, and remember the Gilui is really just an expression of that yichud k'moshe hu bi'etzem. Meaning that Gilui in these madregas is a very, very delicate inyan, and it's not by any means a separate inyan, and it's not by any means an islapshus in a dova sheni. Avamel is a pilgrim. gesagt. Ach, לפי זה, ועד הייחוד, אין כמוי שני דברים המשכתיים. Whenever you'll say it, it's not like two דברים המשכתיים. דימה יש רוחך ערך האוהב והגילוי לגבי אטרוס המייצל. There must be some difference, there must be a ריחוק. מכל מוקים, הרי זה האורס המאציו. It is a horror of the Etzem himself. How he's beyond the spheres mamish. Prince Hamachio, so Prince Chitenius Shayach Ellen Herzog. Okay. It's not mamish the pneumius of the earth and the Machio. It's only a Chitenius Eish Galus Mimeno, but the whole inner is really Kamoishu Etzloi. And it just comes down for some purpose. Yeah, Lagabi the Nevoy. Geen in kedusha the oil and the kli they are b'shorsham is mamish one Indian. You can't be that's the way it goes all the way down the line. Yeah, this is a stress of how great the yisachtus is between the oil and the kli in Tachlit HaKedusha. So I'll have to stop there because I've got to get into something now before all these guys leave. I've got to take care of something because as soon as it hits 9:30, they'll all disappear. I've got to do something. And we'll see that the part is, he holds that there is two in Yonim. That's what he calls Atzmas V'Kelim. That's one on when he says Atzmas, he means the oil, like I just pointed out. He says that two in Yonim. But he said that you can't nonetheless say it's like the Moshe of the Guf with the Neshama. And then he brings Rabbeinu, then he brings the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe says that even though the Keinim are Mamish Alakus, but nonetheless they're a Gilui the Koech HaGvul Mamish. They'll become like a separate Indian, which is shy for the earth to be the earth's Koech HaBligvul. And the earth HaGvul and the Bligvul Kilu interact. And in the Marechas, it's not like that. The Koech HaGvul hasn't mamish revealed itself in any real way. It's just the inner bringing one down to the other. And therefore, Lefia Biyah Zeh, Kitzas Tzorik Hiyun, what is the Biyah, the Shidei Avedis HaKodesh? Because he sometimes tends to talk the way the Alter Rebbe does. And we find in Siddur that they mamish talk very openly about this, and here the Rebbe connects the Avedis HaKodesh more with the Marechas. There's a lot of inyonim in this whole little piece here, but a dayan tzrichim iyun v'tzrichim biyah, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we've been taken to this tremendously basic dealing with a very, very basic issue. Dainu, whereas v'chelim harayam, it's at a mitias Phoenician shalahem in Olam HaAtzilas. We'll have to hold there, and Be'ez Hashem, at least what it means is that everything is petatus aftas, and it's only esa v'loy teisha v'esa v'loy achadasa, or in the sitracha, Achman in Islam, there you can have achadasa, there you can have the esa, and you can have the chayas, which is a dova hivdal v'chuli ki yadua, of too much yadua. There's a hole in the show, it should no longer be yadua, so we know tachasa, aftas, yichud, Iskalas, Hamish, B'chol Inyonim, Kipshutei. And that means Iskalas V'Yisaktis of Melech Mashiach. So you have to forgive me, I want to try and get these guys. About the union of the Fabringen, and we'll have to talk about it, because that's in my kochus of something. There'll be a Fabringen here in the yeshiva. I don't know how much I'll take part. I'll be there at the beginning, but I don't know if I'll be here for very long. I'm just not in good shape. So it seems to me that my main contribution, at least for the next few months, in yeshiva is going to be through the shirim that I give. I'm going to try and put everything into my shirim. That's going to be my main, feed in. For bringing, I'm going to have to just take it easy because I can't just blow myself. I can't just ruin myself and then later try and get it together in pieces. It's just not fun to. Because it happened last week, I did things with you on Mamish on Friday. I was very concerned. I just completely collapsed. But I just got to watch it. I can't, no point of doing it. So what I'm going to do is make my shiurim my main way of communicating. And I'll talk a bit, as well when I get to Koftal tables, and then I'll just have to call it a night. What can I? That's the way it is for the moment. Or I just won't give any shiurim and I'll bring a bit. But I don't think that's right. I think we should have the shiurim. Okay, good guys. That thing with what happened to get it out. I don't know, for some reason it just blew me. Right then. It's unbelievable.